Councilmember Gassman.
Here.
Seeley.
Here.
McGraw.
Here.
Allison.
Here.
Connell.
Here.
Shimmers.
Here.
Councilman McGraw, please read the minutes. I move to dispense with the reading of the regular city council meeting and committee of the whole minutes of January 9th, 2018, and that they be approved as published on January 22nd, 2018.
Second.
Thank you. We
You're
have a
welcome.
motion and a second. Can we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Shimmers.
Yes.
Gassman.
Yes.
Seeley.
Yes.
McGraw.
Yes.
Allison.
Yes.
Connell.
Yes.
Thank you. We have a proclamation tonight, and that's going to be read by Councilman Shimmers.
Proclamation recognizing the 50th anniversary of the municipal home rule in Iowa. Whereas home rule is essential to effective and responsive municipal governance in Iowa and provides flexibility to make decisions at the local level where decisions are made closest to the people and they impact can be tailored to fit conditions, local conditions, needs and concerns in order to better serve taxpayers. And whereas the city of Clinton supports home rule and the powers it provides to make local decisions that best reflect the residents of our community. And whereas the citizens of Iowa approved the adoption of home rule in the Constitution of Iowa on November 5th, 1968. And whereas this is the 50th year of the municipal home rule in Iowa. And whereas home rule continues to be vital to the health and prosperity of all cities in Iowa. Now, therefore, I, Mark S. Volich, Mayor of the City of Clinton, Iowa, do hereby recognize the 50th anniversary of municipal home rule in Iowa and proudly support its continued authority. In witness whereof, I hereunto set my hand and cause the seal of the City of Clinton to be affixed this 30th day of January, 2018. Mark S. Volich, Mayor.
Thank you. We have one public hearing tonight. I'll convene that public hearing. The hearing concerning the vacation and conveyance of Wild Rose Circle South containing 45,632 square feet to Valley Bluff Corporation for $114,000. Councilman McGraw.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move that the public hearing concerning the vacation and conveyance of Wild Rose Circle South containing 45,632 square feet to Valley Bluff Corporation for $114,000 be entered into the record.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Your Honor,
Yes.
I think on the first part of the public hearing, we asked if anybody in the audience would
Okay.
like to make a comment on that.
Is there anybody in the audience that would like to address this issue? Thank you. Councilman McGraw.
I have an ordinance for the first consideration.
Well, we have to vote on the second one.
We'll take the vote on the, we'll take a vote on the first consideration, that the public hearing that Lynn read first. So roll call, please.
Councilmember Connell.
Yes.
Shimmers.
Yes.
Gassman.
Yeah.
Gassman.
Yeah.
Seeley.
Yes.
Yes.
McGraw. Allison.
Yes. Councilman McGraw.
An ordinance providing for the vacation and conveyance of Wild Rose Circle South containing 45,632 square feet to Valley Bluff Corporation for $114,000.
Thank you. We have no other public hearings.
You still have to have a, normally we just take the ordinance for first consideration and then say yes or no, and then
Okay.
she reads
All right,
the ordinance.
all right. Can we call the roll on that?
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Can we have a vote, please?
Councilmember Connell.
Yes.
Shimmers.
Yes.
Gassman.
Yes.
Seeley.
Yes.
McGraw.
Yes.
Allison.
Yes. Okay. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak to the council? We have no notes that came forward tonight.
And anything from the clerk's office?
Yeah. Is there anything in the clerk's office? Thank you. All right. Let's move to the consent agenda. Councilman Gassman.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented on the attachment.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
I just wanted to pull one item, 16, just for clarification later on.
Councilman Gasman.
Well, we'll vote for the balance of the
We'll,
consent agenda.
can we move to approve the balance of the consent agenda?
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Connell,
Yes.
Shimmers,
Yes.
Gassman.
Yes.
Seeley.
Yes.
McGraw,
Yes.
Allison.
Yes. Okay, now we'll move to motions, resolutions, and ordinances. Councilman Geisman.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move that the claims we have be received, approved, and placed on file.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? May I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember McGraw,
Yes.
Allison.
Yes.
Connell,
Abstain?
Shimmers,
Yes.
Gassman.
Yes.
Seeley.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilman Seeley.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have a resolution eliminating the committee of the whole meeting held on the first Tuesday of each month at 7 p.m. Second.
We have
Move this be adopted as read.
We have a motion and a second. May we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Shimmers,
Yes.
Gassman.
Yes.
Seeley,
Yes.
McGraw,
Yes.
Allison.
Yes.
Connell.
Yes.
Councilman Connell.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have an ordinance for the first consideration.
Second.
An ordinance amending chapters 90 and 90. Oops,
We
sorry.
have to have roll call. May
Boy,
have
we're
roll
really
call,
out of sync
please.
today, aren't we?
Yeah. We're
It's
in the
the
wrong
cold.
seats. May I have roll call, please?
Councilmember Seeley,
Yes.
McGraw,
Yes.
Allison.
Yes.
Connell.
Yes.
Shimmers,
Yes.
Gassman.
Yes.
An ordinance amending chapters 90 and 94 of the Clinton, Iowa Code of Ordinances.
Thank you. Councilman Gasman.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have a resolution setting public hearing regarding proposed capital improvement program for FY 2019 to 2024 for the city of Clinton, Iowa. I move this be adopted as presented.
Second?
We have a resolution adopted, presented. May I have are there any questions or comments?
Does
Yes.
this change anything as we're modifying stuff?
Well, actually, during the public hearing, we'll be able to actually continue to modify as well. So
Okay.
we're gonna set that for if anybody else wants to come forward and give comments, but that'll give us from now until the 13th to make sure we work through all your guys' concerns.
Okay.
March 13th.
Oh, February 13th.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. May we have roll call, please?
Councilmember McGraw,
Yes.
Allison.
Yes.
Connell.
Yes.
Shimmers.
Yes.
Gassman.
Yes.
Seeley.
Yes.
Thank you, Councilman Gasman.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have a resolution confirming city council appointments for 2018 through 2019. I move this be adopted as read.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Anyone like to read who they are?
I don't know if I have it right offhand. in there. It'd be in this one.
All right.
Well, let's see.
Want me to read it?
Sure.
If you'd like.
You found it?
Yeah, I found
Go
it.
ahead.
You want to read?
Sure. Finance Committee, Chair Lynn McGraw, Paul Gassman, Seth Oder, alternate Sean Connell. Solid Waste Agency Representative, it's gonna be the mayor or designee. I think we've covered that in a resolution already. Number 3 would be Oversight Committee, City Assessor, Bill Shemmers. Number 4, Mayor Pro Tem, Julie Allison. Advisory Appointments Committee, Lynn McGraw. Highway 30 Coalition of Eastern Iowa, Julie Allison and Bill Shemmers. CVB Board Liaison, Paul Gassman. Mayor's Youth Commission, Seth Oder. Neighborhood Improvement Committee, Cody Seeley. Capital Improvement Committee, Paul Gassman, Sean Connell, Bill Shemmers. Deer Management Committee, Seth Oder. Parks and Recreation Advisory Board Liaison, Julie Allison. Lions Business and Technology Park Liaison, Cody Seeley. Humane Society Liaison, Lynn McGraw. Historic Preservation Commission Liaison, Paul Gassman. Government Affairs Committee Liaison, Bill Shemmers.
Thank you. Just in case somebody thought that this is all we do.
No.
We have a,
As
we,
long as Seth is not here, let's give him some.
I missed that page.
we have a
That's
motion.
17 through 30.
up for all this, did you?
Wow.
We have a motion and a second. Can we have roll call, please?
Councilmember McGraw,
Yes.
Allison.
Yes.
Connell.
Yes.
Shimmers.
Yes.
Gassman.
Yes.
Seeley.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilman McGraw.
Figure out where I am. I have a motion to approve the mayor's recommendations to boards and commissions.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? You want to read those? Or?
Read them again?
No, those are different.
Yeah. These are the ones we're always begging people to do
Yeah.
because we have shortages and
Okay.
we're trying to encourage people to
All right.
participate.
Airport Commission, Tom Detterman, six-year term. Trevor Volz, six-year term. Capital Improvement Program Committee, Mike Kirchhoff, a four-year term. Civil Service Commission, Jeanette Peterson, a four-year term. Historic Preservation Commission, Bart Levens, six-year term. Martha Truax, a six-year term. City Plan Commission, Trevor Volz, six-year term. Traffic Study Commission, James Horst, six-year term. Traffic Study Commission, Tom Detterman, six-year term. Tree Commission, Scott Bingston, three-year term.
We want to thank those people for coming forward and volunteering for the commission.
But also maybe just make a mention that these applications are on the city's website, I believe, and I can't remember what section it is, but there's maybe a link we could probably publish, and they can be found probably in the clerk's office. But I know there's always, the mayor had mentioned,
Need.
always a need for that, so thank you for those that did step up.
You're welcome. We have a motion and a second. May we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Gasman.
Yes.
Seeley,
Yes.
McGraw,
Yes.
Allison,
Yes,
Connell,
Yes.
Shimmers.
Yes.
thank you. We have one item of unfinished business. Councilman Seeley.
Your Honor, we
We
have
have
one
an,
more.
the
amended
adjusted,
agenda.
Oh,
That's right.
Yep.
okay.
We slid it in on you, sorry.
Yeah, you did. Councilman Shemmers.
I have a resolution approving parking space lease agreement with Libertad Clinton LLC.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion? Hearing none, may we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Gasman.
yes.
Seeley,
Yes.
McGraw,
Yes.
Allison,
Yes,
Connell,
Yes.
Shimmers.
Yes.
thank you. Now we have one more item of unfinished business. Councilman Seeley.
Oh,
Number
number
16.
16.
IT?
Yeah, we got an
Yep.
IT guy.
Yep. So what this is we have a fiber line that runs to the county, and we have a circuit that is actually rented back from the county at $500 a month. And then I think in 17, we did $12,000 that we pay for the services. It's basically $60 an hour because what the police, the sheriff, and the county have together is joint servers that are used on those. And right now, our IT guru is not trained on those and is still managing all the other side of the stuff. And we're not probably ready for him to split himself apart and be able to help them out. So this is it's been a really good relationship. It's on that internal net that they have to take stuff back and forth on. So, you know, the IT director of the county is really good, and they're usually on the spot as I look at Tom, as they can come down there and get things knocked out and fix stuff for them. So
Cool.
the future is, we've talked to the Board of Supervisors, maybe the future might hold, as we get more things under control here with, you know, as the servers and SharePoint, there might be a time where we could reconvene and discuss with the county if Josh could actually assist.
Okay. All right, I'll move to approve 16.
I'll
Second.
second.
We have a motion and a second. May we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Allison,
Yes,
Connell,
Yes.
Shimmers.
Yes.
Gasman.
Yes.
Seeley,
Yes.
McGraw.
Yes.
thank you. We have no further unfinished business. Councilman Gasman.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move that we adjourn to 7 PM, February 13th, 2018.
Thank you.
Oh.
Okay. We'll move immediately into the Committee of the Whole. May we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Gasman.
Here.
Seeley,
Here.
McGraw,
Here.
Allison,
Here.
Connell.
Here.
Shimmers.
Here.
Tonight we have Nicole Turpin from ECIA talking about HUD lead abatement. She's going to give us an update on that.
Hi, good evening. I just want to introduce program staff who will be working on the program. We have Joe Buljet and Ryan Feller. Ryan will be assisting with application intake, income verifications, that part of the process, and Joe will be our primary lead inspector and healthy homes inspector. Oh, I think about April of last year, the city of Clinton and the city of Macokota had a joint application into HUD for their lead paint reduction grant, lead hazard reduction grant, and Healthy Homes funding. The grant was awarded at the full amount, 1.5 million for lead risk or lead paint reduction, and 150,000 for Healthy Homes supplemental funding. With the agreement, the City of Clinton is providing 2/3 of the local match, with 1/3 provided by the City of Macokota. And therefore, we are going to do try to do the units, 2/3 of the 64 units in the City of Clinton, 1/3 in the City of Macokota. In the unlikely event that, let's say, we do one extra unit in the City of Macokota and not the City of Clinton, that the numbers, the City of Macokota would pick up the match on that one. So the City of Clinton would not be out funding for a unit not done in the city. We therefore started the HUD negotiation process in August. It was completed right before December 1st. We were under the impression that HUD was going to give us a January 1 start date. About 2 days before December 1, they changed and said, hurry up and get the mayor to sign all these forms that were just kind of their standard, what's the budget, you went through their processes, those type of things. And that they were going to give us the month of December free. No, they didn't. But that's okay, because we were moving along anyway. So we have begun the process and have submitted paperwork to HUD on program policies and procedures and administrative plan with a few questions. Once we get clarification, we will give them to the city to review before finalization. We are currently working on the Tier 1 environmental review process, which is like a generic kind of overview, floodplain, airport hazards. If, there's a coastal hazard, which obviously we can mark not applicable, but those type of things.
We do have seagulls.
So when that requires a publication in both papers, the Clinton Herald as well as the Macokota paper. We are working on that and hoping to have publication this week or the first part of next week. I'm trying to line up to get them to run the same time, same start date, because we have at least a 7-day comment period that starts with publication. And then HUD has a comment period. So as soon as we finish that process, they will give us a release of funds and we can begin expending money. We have the single family application ready to go and are in the process of getting the rental application ready to go. And we're currently advertising with that one, and then we'll get the rental one out and get that distributed to landlords and other groups that have access to landlords and tenants. So that is where we're at.
Qualifications, are there some specific qualifications?
Yep, great question. So our first priority would be households with a child under 6 years of age that has an elevated blood lead level. Our second priority are households that have children under the age of 6, either as their primary residence or there a significant amount of time, such as it's their daycare provider or they're at grandma and grandpa's house quite frequently. And then our third priority, which is the least that HUD doesn't like to see, is just kind of everybody else. On single family homes, it's 80% of the county median income is the guideline that they have to fall under. And on rental, it gets into number of units and as well as like income. So if it's one unit, and this is where I'm trying to get some clarification from HUD, if it's just a 1 unit rental, I believe it's 50% of the county median income. If it's a 2 unit, it can, I think one be 50 and one be 80. So it kind of does it by how many, it's got an equation that
And that's based on the tenant?
the tenant in there. The other thing that we applied for, through Eastern Iowa Regional Housing Authority, they have a housing trust fund. So if a unit, is single-family owner occupied, and they're 30% of the county median income, we have some supplemental funds that can go to additional lead work if that's needed, additional healthy homes funding if that is needed, or if there's like additional needs that we see in the home to make it safe, that money can be used for that. So, our Healthy Home Supplemental Fund, when divided between the 64 units, comes out, I think just under or right around $2,400. So it's not a terrible amount to, make a huge impact, but it can address one or two issues. And those could be things like radon, fire or carbon monoxide detectors, reducing tripping hazards, those type of things. There's 29 things that we assess for when we go into the unit.
That's on the Healthy Homes Initiative?
Yep.
Are these age-related homes? I mean, is there a certain,
It would be anything pre-1978 when they stopped using lead paint. The other thing is I know that there's been talk about the city applying for another community development block grant fund. In the area there, if there was homes identified, and they meet both program requirements, we could combine funding. So you could get a real bang for your buck. On average, we are looking at approximately or a little over $15,000 a unit to do the lead hazard reduction work, plus on top of it, plus the healthy homes.
And that's interior and exterior work?
It would be to reduce the lead hazard.
So if you run into a house that's like all wood siding, that's lead-based paint, do you try to go to the extent of painting it, or do you side it?
Depend on how much money we have. If there are
do you want to step up? Would you step up to the mic, please?
Many times we run into that, and if we do run into that, a lot's gonna depend on how much other lead work we have to do in the home. Now, when she said the 15,000, that's gonna be an average of,
So some might cost.
so we may run into a house somewhere along the line that we only have to replace 3 or 4 windows and do a little bit of wet painting and scraping on some window sills or something. And in that case, the bill might be only like $3,000. Where another project on the other side of town, we may have to put in $22,000. But in order to do that, we have to get HUD approval, because when we go over a certain threshold, we have to get approval for them to go over the threshold. So, this is, when she said that 15 grand or whatever, that was an average of
Is that their
projects.
threshold?
I believe it's like $19,999.
Yeah, 19,999. Once we go over that, we just, and generally speaking, they're gonna go ahead and give us the approval. We'll have the work write-ups all ready for them, and they'll be able to see the need. One of the things that's really important to know in this is, we can't go in and pick and choose what lead problems we're gonna take care of. We either do all the lead, or we do none of the lead. They don't allow us to do just a piecemeal fix of the lead problems in a house. And Nicole, I don't know if she said this or not, the Healthy Homes supplemental funding is tied to the lead. And if we don't do any lead in a home, we can't apply any of the supplemental funding to that home.
Okay.
Any other questions while I'm up here?
Very good.
So if I'm a person at home sitting watching this, or see it in the newspaper or hear on the radio tomorrow, how do they apply?
Building and Neighborhood Services will have applications. We're gonna have applications out on the ECIA website, because we can use our domain and have it as like a supplemental with no cost. And that link is gonna be published in the Lighthouse News.
Yep, February 12th.
Okay. Just making sure I have the correct
Yep, no, it's
publication
Lighthouse,
name.
yep.
So that'll have that, so people can access applications via the internet as well. And then we'll have if there's suggestions on places you think people will frequent, we will get them out to like the schools. Let's see, the VNA was a partner. Community Action of Eastern Iowa is a partner. The Housing Authority is a partner. So we'll kind of get those out. Been holding off a little bit until we're kind of closer to the release of funds, not to get people all excited and then be like, oh, nope, we have to wait. We can't spend money yet. So yeah, probably in the next couple weeks, we'll really hit that hard to get applicants in.
And then as an applicant, say is approved or is vetted through that, is BNS gonna do the walkthrough, through the home, or is, your group gonna go with BNS and then potential contractors? How does that work, and then selection of contractors and things like that?
So that's a great question. All contractors have to be approved by HUD. So we are currently out mailing out contractor applications to get a gauge on who is already lead, like certified in the contractor world, and who needs training, and working on getting training brought here locally to reduce the cost of travel and kind of compensate some of those costs. We won't compensate all of it through the program, but enough to kind of make it worth their while to get trained. And then we have to do a SAMS.gov check, which basically looks if they've been disbarred by another federal program. So we're doing that right now, and then that will be our list that we work from. But if anybody ever calls, we will be happy to add contractors to that pool at any time.
I've had
Do they
kids
have-
out of, oh, go ahead, sorry.
Does the firm have to be registered in SAM to get the award?
Yeah, well, they would have to have a DUNS number to get a SAMS.gov check, and then we have to follow like all state of Iowa, so they would have to be, they'd have to have their lead abatement
That's their kind of
contractor certification and be a registered contractor with the state of Iowa.
So I've had kids not in school for a while, so if they're 6 or under, are they testing in school for the lead test, or how would somebody go about getting that lead test?
The VNA offers lead testing for free, so we'll let people know that. But I believe that before you go into kindergarten, that the state is really doing a push to get kids tested. The other thing I wanted to note too is with our rental applications, the grant application was written that part of the part of the cost up to like 10% would be passed on to the to the landlord or the owner. So.
Is there a time limit once you begin?
In what regard, I'm sorry?
Well, say that you start, do you have a time limit where you work on this project and it's done, completed, and does it need to be in a calendar year or a fiscal year or something like that?
There is a time limit on like how good the paperwork is, like how long the income verifications are, how long if they submit like a blood lead level test with it, how long that's valid for. I believe it's either like 3 or 6 months, and then the program only would like the lead work to be completed within 10 business days, because that's all that they're going to cover relocation. Well, I shouldn't say that's not all that they're going to cover, but HUD, like, that's one of the things that they look at is if you're consistently running at like 15 days relocation, they frown upon that. They really want you to stick and have the project completed within like 10.
So is the 1.5 million, like what Councilmember Mayor Pro Temp is saying, is that for the year then to then, spend those funds on or 3 years?
It's a 3-year program.
Perfect.
Oh, 3.
Because
So if
that's
they
what I
don't
was
get all
saying,
64 done, say this year, and, they've got some
Yep.
tail into next
So we
year,
can
it's
do
still
as
okay.
many houses as possible within the funding capacity.
Yep.
There's no limit.
Yeah, if we're able to do 70, and we have money, let's say things come in consistently below budget, yeah, we can do them.
Yeah. And you kind of treat it first come, first served, meaning of those that have come in, they've registered, they meet priority 1 status. Then you can kind of go down that, yeah.
Except for if a elevated blood level case would come in,
Then that
that gets
jumps to
bumped
the top.
up.
That makes sense.
I just addressed the first part of your question before. I think you wanted to know if BNS was going to be doing the assessments. No, actually, once we get the application in and everything is approved, we will set up an appointment with the homeowner or the property owner, and I will be doing the assessment. I'll go in and it's a very thorough, about a 5-hour process. I go in and I do readings on every component in the house: window, door, wall, baseboard, window casing. You know, I can go through the whole list, but with an XRF machine, and the XRF reads the amount of lead on the surface instantaneously. So I hold the gun on there, and immediately I know whether it has a positive reading or not. And if the lead is deteriorated on that surface, then that becomes one of the things that we have to take care of. If it's not deteriorated, we generally leave it alone, unless we think that it could be, you know, in the near future a hazard, and then we would have it wet scraped and painted to make it lead safe, so to speak, with the
So do
quotes.
you get blood tested occasionally with all the lead?
I typically
Is
don't.
you elevated?
I don't really need to because I'm not really coming in contact
you're
with
just
it.
doing the gun.
Our contractors, by the rules from the Iowa Department of Public Health, are required to be tested periodically because they are, they're stripping it and creating, you know,
The dust and everything.
the dust and stuff like that, and they're pulling apart the windows and things like that, and creating the dust in the air. So they're required, even though they're supposed to be taking precautions, we can't be watching them every single minute of every single project. So, and I'm not saying that all contractors are, but some contractors have a tendency to sometimes say, well, today maybe I don't need to wear my mask, and that can happen. So, but generally speaking, they're really good about the safety aspect of it, and you know, it's very rare that you have one of them come back with a positive blood test. And if they do, then they have to actually leave the work site until they have 2 consecutive tests where they don't have a high level anymore. So.
But we've met with building services to develop a like chain of communication so that they know what work is being done, what units are being worked on, that way, and or even talked about maybe like getting access so we can directly enter into their system to kind of reduce and streamline the process. So.
And one other thing that Jeff wanted me to address. On every single project, there will be a lead certified abatement contractor that will, in order to even bid on it, you have to be certified as a lead abatement contractor. And every single person that walks through that door to do work for them has to be certified at least to the 24-hour level of a lead abatement worker. So we will not have people who do not have the training and do not know how dangerous this stuff is working in these homes. So I hope that kind of calms your fears about people getting lead poisoned. So I'm actually certified as a worker and a lead risk assessor, lead inspector risk assessor. So I've had more than 80 hours of training on it. So hopefully I can keep myself from getting lead poisoned. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything further? Well, thank you, Nicole
Thank
and
you.
Joe and Ryan for coming
Thank you.
tonight. Next, we have Dennis Hart talking about surplus equipment.
Dennis, I see you have some vehicles for BNS.
Now that's not fair.
And he wasn't even listening.
There's some love.
Yeah.
Or maybe he was, just left it out.
No, we wanted the
Yeah.
Yugo.
Dennis Hart, Fleet and Transit. That car that is on there
Thanks,
from,
ECIA.
Thank you.
from BNS was actually surplus last year. I haven't got it sold yet, but when I went back for the resolution, there was no VIN number to track what vehicle was. So since I haven't had it sold, I went ahead and listed
Put it
it
back on.
again.
I
just
thought,
see-
I thought Creighton wanted to still drive that.
No, no, they are driving an old Crown Vic,
Yeah.
but not that car.
Not that.
The list you see is basically from a lot of the different departments. We got put together, old outdated stuff, rusted equipment that needs to, some of it is a couple of the snow plows, are newer, but it's stuff that we're not using, sitting around. And that's why we put it on the surplus list, so we can dispose of it. The back page, I think you got probably 2 pages. This is the 3 recycle trucks. We're gonna get them on the market so we can see if we can get some good money out of them.
How do you think that'll go?
I hope good. They told us The dealer told us basically they would be looking at cabin chassis. Nobody wants recycled trucks because everybody's moving to what we did. So the value there is just for the cabin chassis, for the truck chassis.
Any other questions?
What's the Ford Expedition from?
That is the old police department vehicle, pretty rough shape.
Yeah. What about that bus,
Which one?
2006?
That bus has been parked for a year. We got major engine problems. It's got the exact same engine that the Ford ambulances have, and I park them. You
Oh,
can't afford to keep them going.
That's the one we wanna, the current ambulance we wanted to part with.
Can we
Yeah.
use parts off of this for the ambulance?
No.
Think
It
Chief
needs
shook-
probably,
shook his head, yeah.
when the ambulance goes down, it'll need the exact same
might.
parts, probably a new
People,
engine.
This is the Lions ambulance, FYI.
Yeah,
That's some love.
It's a good thing they can walk to get you.
only have to go a block for me.
That's right.
Walk across the street.
Are there any further questions? What would you like to do? Move this forward? Okay,
Thank you.
somebody want to make
Thanks,
that?
Dennis.
I'll make the
Make the
motion to, go ahead and move this forward to the next
Second.
council meeting.
There's a motion and a second. Can we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Seeley,
Yes.
McGraw,
Yes.
Allison,
Yes.
Connell,
Yes.
Shimmers,
Yes.
Gasman.
Yeah.
Next, we have Matt.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening.
So these are two parcels, and Jeff Japp and I have been talking about this, and I talked a little bit about Councilman Seeley, but this is the first time we'll actually have parcels that are buildable lots. So the first one you're looking at is actually 159 by 132. Interesting, though, is the assessed land value is $15,542.
Wow.
And I don't know how they came up with that. It's pretty flat. Councilman Seeley and I discussed also the fact that the Corps of Engineers, we have to have a standoff of the levee, so we make sure we have that right. But we wanted to get your thoughts and guidance on, trying this one in the next page, on putting it out for bid and see what happens, understanding fully that you guys have first line of refusal if any of the bids come in lower. But right now, that's been sitting there. It's interesting, kitty corner to that is the Odeon property, and that's assessed at $20,830 right now.
Why
I thought
haven't
that
we
was-
listed that yet?
We don't own that one.
I thought we did.
I'm not sure.
We did.
Are you sure? I'll double check. I just pulled it up.
The
There might
Odeon
be.
one, we own that, right?
Yeah,
Do we do?
we own that.
Oh, they haven't updated.
I know we
it.
kept
goes
it
back
because all the
like a year and a
construction
half.
work,
They haven't
right?
updated
And
it.
get-
They haven't updated it.
But we could sell it in the future if we wanted to.
Yeah. So what we're looking to do is basically, we're requesting a motion to move the resolution for a public hearing, where we'd bring these forth at a public hearing. And then after that public hearing, we'd have X number of days that people could bid. We would get those sealed bids, we would bring them back to you, open them up and see if this is what we want to do with these properties or not, to see what would come back, because we really don't know at this point.
Did you verify? Because if you look at like
Yep,
this
that line
little-
across.
the little chunks, I'm talking about the extended on the levee. Can we even legally sell that little 30-foot since it is on the levee technically?
Yeah, well, we have not actually got anything back from the Corps yet, but Jeff and I talked about actually doing what you just did with your pin.
Yeah.
On there is making the lot, because right now the lot is 159 by 132, and we could easily
We
take it
could
down.
Take it down. 30.
Exactly. And so if you see the red line that's below 36 dot
Yeah.
dash 003.
Yeah, that's where it needs.
That's
Yeah.
where it would have to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's just a case where they were mowing, and they just would mow all the way through there when they mowed the levee. And they kept a line going across as you watch it. But you would still have plenty of room to put in, and it's a nice flat lot. The other thing we'd have to address there is somebody did build a house, that's basically not really a road, it's.
No, that's a brand new road.
Yeah. It's all
Per little-
blacktop.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was
the
one
one
road
that's-
off.
20
That's the
feet.
one that
Yeah.
goes
Got
at an
brand new
angle.
curb and gutter. You haven't been up there to inspect?
No, I did. I thought it was a
Jason
road
can't
off.
give us a report. You've been there. It's nice.
Yeah.
What? You know.
Yeah,
'Cause
because
we were
the road goes at an angle. I told you about
Yeah,
that.
oh, gotcha. I was a
Once you
road
get
off.
on Roosevelt, it's straight, and then when you get to that block, it tilts that way because it went around a tree.
Interesting.
Designed
Okay.
that one.
So,
So, looking for a motion to move the resolution, to set a public hearing at the February 13th meeting, for that.
Well, with this bigger lot, these bigger lots, and then we're talking about
Yep.
the Odeon and stuff. Do we want to look at different forms of marketing to try to obtain more
Fair market,
realistic,
more
fair
fair.
market value.
Yeah, like where you see the blue dotted line for Odeon, where we could split it, you know, and make two, you mean, or?
Well, if you could make them into a
that
few
could
more
be,
because those are
residential
both 50.
Or it
lots.
could be for apartment building, that's zoned R4, I think.
Especially in some of those areas where the houses are close together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But I just mean like in this one, I mean, I don't wanna get another $200 bid on a lot this big, and I
we
think
can
that
refuse it.
might have
Right.
that.
We have
Yeah.
right to
Well, you
refuse.
can
But we can
deny
always
it.
deny it.
We should.
We just
But-
wanna
but-
see,
Right of
because
refusal.
before we
Yeah.
spend money with giving it to our real estate
Realtor
folks to
and
do,
stuff, yeah.
we just wanna
Sure.
test the market that's out there and see, is there somebody that wants to come along? Because the other thing to think about is, heaven forbid, somebody came and said, hey, I'd really like to build this type of house or this type of apartment.
Mm-hmm.
We might say we sell it for a good low price so they can get in there and
That's
build
true,
it.
too.
You know, maybe that's a whole nother program we look into.
know.
And
well, that lot's not R4 though, that's residential.
No,
isn't
it's
it?
residential, yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, we're looking for lots also for the Habitat for
Yep,
Humanity.
and that's what Jeff and I said, cause you could
Yeah.
probably put two houses
Yeah,
there.
put
And
two
tiny
small
homes.
houses on
Yep.
it.
R4 is residential, like all,
Well,
I think a
this
lot
one
of-
is,
Yeah.
but that one isn't.
That might be zone commercial from Louisiana.
No, that's an R4.
Is it?
Yeah.
Jeff's
It-
looking,
it-
I can see it
didn't-
going on.
It didn't get grandfathered in because it's
I'll
been
make that
down for
motion.
3
Make that
years
motion.
or whatever.
That's an interesting idea though, because if we could market vacant sites and say, hey, we'll give this to you for a
Yep.
$1 if you build a house on it.
Yep. What Jeff and I talked about
You
was
know.
coming up with, and Mike Brown was coming up with 5 house plans that we like my personal, like a nice
You
front
talking
porch.
tiny houses?
Nope,
or-
regular houses. But 5 designs, and says, hey, if you come and build one of these designs, we'll give you this property for $1
That's kind of a good idea.
to build it, and now we have a new, 1,200 to 1,500 square foot home.
Yeah.
I think
Well, it
that,
has to have
back in,
eaves.
didn't in Dubuque, they went with a a porch type concept
Yeah.
to build the neighborhoods back up again.
I think porches are important.
Yeah, cause it's,
Really, I
I
mean,
do
a
too,
lot
for
of them, they're
communication.
smeared off the face
well,
of
then
the
you
building.
can be out front,
Yeah, we need to have people sitting out and swinging on their
Yeah.
porch again and that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
I
How
agree.
often do you sit on yours?
I see him
don't.
every time, I see him.
I have a big yard.
He does.
Yes, you do.
But you know, I was gonna mention, not to be funny, but that one house that was built by Habitat,
Yeah.
it doesn't have any eaves
No,
because of
There's a
our
reason
zoning.
for that.
Yeah.
I mean,
or a front porch.
It looks
or
terrible.
a front porch, and
Yeah.
so it looks hokey, so we need to adjust our,
Yeah,
Plus all the
some
water's
of
gonna be
our,
running down behind the site.
or on the neighbor anyhow.
yeah.
But I
We
mean,
have
we
a
should be
motion
looking
and a
at
second.
some exceptions.
We
to
have
that.
a motion and
It's
a
the one on
second.
Sixth Avenue.
Did you make a
and
second?
Fifth
Can we have roll call, please?
I
have-
made
Down
the
at the
first.
other end.
The quiet guys down here.
Your
Yeah.
Honor, you didn't ask for additional discussion.
I did.
You guys were having it.
I did, and you did.
We're doing a 2 for, we're gonna do, well, we'll do both if you,
We're doing both.
Separate.
right?
yeah. But-
Separate.
And we can talk, you wanna keep separate?
Yeah,
Okay,
Yeah, we
Okay.
should,
Better keep
because
it
that's
up
how
there
it,
on the separate.
that's how it was presented.
Yep.
yep.
and we'll keep it.
Councilmember Gassman.
But,
Yea or nay
Yes.
on the floor?
yes,
Yes.
Seeley. McGrath.
Yes.
Allison.
Yes.
Connell.
Yes.
Shimmers.
Yes.
Page 2, ladies and gentlemen.
City Administrator Brooke.
So this is actually, that big building there in front is Rastrelli, so you go back a ways. And this one actually came up because we had several of the neighbors that were interested in that area, back there as well. So this hit our radar, Jeff and I talked about it, it's assessed empty right now as, 8,968, that lot there. It's 62 by 98, so it is a little bigger than normal sitting back there. And so we'd also like to look at doing a motion to move the resolution, for a, public hearing. on
is that the
February-
one we just tore down?
Yes.
So do you consider the, cost of tearing it down as part of the sale value?
We
Try to
did
recover
not.
it.
We gotta look at
Yeah,
that.
We
We
should.
need to look at that.
But it's
Try
gonna
to-
be published out there, cause didn't you say it was?
Yeah. Well, on this one we had,
What was the size of that lot again?
it's, 62 by 98.
It's
Yeah, it is
buildable.
built 62 by 98.
So
Yeah.
this won't be offered,
In
this will be
this
offered to anybody then?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I was just giving you background, it was actually, we were approached by the neighbors, and this is how this one popped in. But we thought, they're in general the same vicinity, so we thought it'd be good to give these two a test and see how they go. Get the public hearing, see if we get some bids, and see if there's some interest for it as well.
As part of that
So-
published, public hearing, can we, disclose that they were recently torn down at a cost of X amount?
Certainly, you bet.
So they know that it's
It
just not.
doesn't necessarily change the
Do-
value of the site.
It doesn't, but
No.
they also know that we can either accept or refuse the
Yeah.
offer.
Definitely.
Did Mark indicate what he was gonna do with it? He's gonna build something on it or just have it for parking?
Build something on it. Think part of business
Okay.
wise versus residential.
Oh, it's zoned residential though.
But that's what he was looking at. Jeff, was that right?
It's
Cause
zoned.
he owns the one that's kitty corner, or not kitty corner, but touches at the bottom.
Yeah, he wouldn't be able to put a business there.
Okay.
It's already.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Any further discussion?
And you can't just build a garage on a lot, right?
No.
Nope, you gotta have a
Yeah.
house. You're supposed to have a house.
No, Your Honor, thank you.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Sorry.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember McGraw.
Yes.
Allison.
Yes,
Connell.
Yes.
Shimmers.
Yes.
Gasman.
Yes.
Seeley.
Yes.
thank you. City Attorney?
I know you guys are excited for this.
Yeah.
Well, after tonight, and my reading, I
We
think
should've
we
had it
need
at
it.
the beginning
Yeah.
of the meeting.
Now I look at the paper.
Yeah, I need help in that area too.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and City Council. I am here at the request of the city clerk and the city administrator to provide some background and some information regarding rules and procedures, as well as some substantive legal things that we run into frequently at a council level that I think are probably important to the way we conduct business. Some of this will be refresher and some of this may be new to you. I'll try to be as brief as I can since I know it's late and people generally do run out of attention span in 20 to 25 minutes according to scientific studies on the matter. So does anybody here, I'm pretty sure Councilmember Shimmers has one because I saw him with it, a 2018 Municipal Leaders Handbook. Any of you have the updated version? If you don't have it, I will get one for all of you and send it all to you. I can bring either bound versions or I can email a electronic version to you. Lynch Dallas edits that every year, and it's the one that I have now, the 2018, is very up to date. It covers most every issue facing city officials. If it doesn't have all the information you need, it will definitely point you in the right direction. If you don't find what you need, that's what I'm here for. I'm the city attorney, so please do call and I will explain to you what it says in there. And if I can't do it, I will find the answer for you so that we can always be pointed in the right direction. First of all, I worked on what is a council manual for the city council, which outlines our typical local procedures for most of the things we do. This is not yet very accurate because I've yet to have a detailed discussion with the mayor and with Matt about it. But once we do and we get something that we think is relatively accurate, we're going to send it to all of you for your comments and suggestions. It will have things about the law in it as well as our local procedures. And hopefully it'll be relatively thorough. It will be a little bit different than the Municipal Leaders Handbook because it'll be Clinton specific about how we've always done things here locally, things about our code that may be unique that control the way we do things. So I'm going to use this kind of as an outline or as a guide. I'm not going to go into great detail regarding all of the things like gift law, home rule, ethics, and conflict of interest. I'll just make a few comments about that. But what I kind of want to do is go over the highlights of what I discovered when I was going over when I was putting together the outline for our handbook. There are a few things that really popped out at me. First of all, cities have the ability under Iowa Code Section 372.135 to provide for our own local rules. And to my knowledge, the city of Clinton doesn't really have a local rules handbook that we use to govern the council. We have a set of practices, we have a home rule charter, we certainly do use the code, and Paul's going to remember a lot of things about the code that you may not even know, some of you newer folks that haven't had a chance to deal with it yet. But so that's why we did this, because we're entitled to do it and we should do it. A few notes. The city attorney is generally the parliamentarian at the city council meetings, although we have a mayor who's very experienced, knows parliamentary rules really well. Councilmember Gasman knows them really well. If the city attorney is not present, then that would typically fall to the mayor to make those rulings. I'm going to go over a few things about Robert's Rules of Order, which we have adopted as our means of running our meetings. A few footnotes about that, though. Do not mistake the fact that if we adopt this council manual and we have already adopted Roberts pursuant to our code, that's a death warrant. That those rules are going to govern the legitimacy of everything we do. That's not really how they work. If we were to make a good faith error in either the application of these rules we adopt or Robert's Rules of Order, that does not void an ordinance that's otherwise properly passed. I mean, I've had circumstances before where council members have said, I don't think any of this is valid because we didn't follow some rule that everybody forgot about. And that's really not the way Iowa law works. So don't be worried that if you pass this, you can't amend it or you can't, by 2/3 vote is one of the suggested ways you can do it. You can get around your own rules by saying, we're not going to follow our local rule tonight because it's not efficient to do that. So, rule enforcement, and this is one of the difficult things. I'll give you an example just from tonight. Mayor Pro Tem Alessi was doing something, and Councilmember Gaspin pointed out what he remembered to be our typical procedure, and we corrected ourselves on the fly. That's an example of how Roberts works to your advantage. It's called a point of order in that particular case, and technically the way you would raise that is you would say, Your Honor, point of order, and you would be recognized and you would state that. There's also a point of privilege. That's things like when the room's too hot, when somebody is really inconvenienced in the back of the room, or, for example, if somebody's not following our rules, you might want to raise a point of order, and those are typical examples of things that you can do. But it's the chair's prerogative to enforce our rules. And we don't typically like to do that because we like to give everybody a chance to talk and nobody wants to ever cut anybody off. But these rules will remind you, once we get them to you for your review, that there are mechanisms under Roberts wherein individual council members can raise points of order to remind the chair to enforce the rules. And the chair can actually do quite a lot to control a meeting. This is a public meeting, so if somebody's out of control, the mayor has the ability under Iowa law we're the property owner. We own these premises. If somebody misbehaves, the mayor can actually direct Captain Boley to remove someone from the room. And we typically have never done that since I've been here, but it can happen. The mayor also has the prerogative to control the time that someone speaks. And we often don't do that, but we can. So there's a number of ways in which we can control the way our meetings run, and our rules will lay out some things. Now, obviously, when you read those, if you don't like them or you think they're too rigid, we can have a discussion about all that. But I will give you some things to suggest. Couple things about Roberts. Roberts, like I said, is not itself. It's in our ordinance, and it does direct that that's how we conduct our meetings, but it's not a substantive set of laws. It should not be viewed that way. It is a set of rules for conducting a meeting. A few notes about our city government structure. Because we have a city administrator form of government, this is very similar to the manager style of government. The administrator was basically hired to run the city when the council is not in session. And that would include most human resources matters, personnel matters, making sure the services of city government are delivered to the citizens of Clinton. And that would include directing the various department heads. Generally speaking, under our form of government, council members should not play a role in that unless they are on a fact-finding mission. For instance, citizen has made a complaint that BNS, for example, did something they didn't approve of. I'm not trying to pick on BNS. It's just that, they tend to tell people when they're doing things they shouldn't be doing, and so we get some complaints once in a while. And if you're investigating that on a fact-finding scenario, that's certainly not what I'm talking about. But generally speaking, the division of labor is we are high-level policymakers at this level. And it's Matt's job to bring high-level, under our form of government, high-level policy issues to you for your attention and give you all the information you need to make an informed decision. The day-to-day things are typically his responsibility, which bleeds into another issue which I have seen many times at the council level, not here particularly, but in other cities. I've been to about 200 council meetings. I was counting them up in the last 5 years. And I've seen council members do this, and I think it's bad when it happens. If there is a personnel issue going on, typically those are confidential personnel matters, which is one of the reasons why we have a closed session possibility under 21.51I to discuss the competency of a public official. So council members should not, no matter how irritated you may be at a particular staff member, if that ever happens, bring that up in a public meeting. It may be something that you feel it's your civic duty to take care of, to straighten out, to go and talk to the city administrator about and say, we've got an issue with X employee, because I don't think my constituents should be complaining to me about this, because that should never happen, for example. But the proper way to handle that, because it is a sensitive personnel issue, is through the city administrator outside the public meeting. Not only that, but any member of the city staff will tell you they don't mind being told by Matt if they've made a mistake, but it is deeply embarrassing and unsettling to them if they're in public. They can't really object. They can't, what are they going to say? You guys are in charge. So to call them on the carpet in front of the council is really, not only does it have, there are legal reasons why I, as the city attorney, I would not want those things discussed in public, because we may have discipline following from any of that, and that's their private business. But also it's difficult for them to really defend themselves. So it's come up a lot, and that's why I mention it. Duties of the city attorney. This is, of course, important to me. Lynch Dallas is the city attorney, is the attorney for all of you, by I mean the entire council sitting as a whole. We don't represent, if Councilmember Gaspin has a personal legal issue, I'd probably have an ethical conflict if I went off and represented him on that. So I would probably refer him to someone. But I advise the council as a whole, the city administrator, this individual city staff, as well as the boards and commissions. So what that means is, and we've had problems with this in the past, if you have a personal, if you have a legal question that's important strictly to you because of an ethical issue, that's fine. By all means, give me a call, and I probably will not communicate any of that advice to your colleagues, because it doesn't really reflect, it's not important to them. They don't need to know. And that I've had happen numerous times. I've had Councilmember McGraw ask me if, do I have a conflict? Because she had a business interest in something that we were considering, and we talked about it, and she made her decision based on what I told her. That's fine. But what you should not do is call me and say, Councilmember so-and-so and Councilmember so-and-so have this position, and I have this position, and can they do that? Is that legal? To try to turn the city attorney as your personal advisor against your colleagues, because I really can't do that. Because I represent the council as a whole. I might say, well, here's what the ordinance says, and let you decide. But I try to stay out of those things. Also, if you have a legitimate question, and I've had numerous excellent questions from the council before, I will usually communicate my advice to the entire council. And I'd like us to get in the practice of that, so that the memo goes out to Matt, it goes out to Mayor Vulich, and it goes out to all of your colleagues as well. So when you ask me a legal question, always assume you're doing it for the benefit of the entire council. Because that's who you hired me, and you are the client as a group. So that's really where the advice should go. A footnote. I've had a couple of issues recently where represented parties with attorneys out in town who have ongoing conflicts with the city of Clinton because they have a lawsuit going on and we're a named party in the lawsuit for some reason, for example. They will approach one council person to try to gain an advantage over their opponent out in town that they may be suing also. You should never have a conversation with a represented party when you know they're suing us or they're in a conflict with us. You should always say immediately, we have an attorney and you are an attorney, sir. So contact the city attorney and here's his telephone number. You know, I'm not saying, and I know every one of your instinct is if somebody complains and says my neighborhood has a problem, you want to talk to them, and that's fine. But once they go out and hire a lawyer and they start trying to agitate and file a lawsuit against us, you're a represented party now. And so your attitude has to change to some degree. You have to say, wait a minute, I'm not trying to be impolite. You have to find a polite way as a elected public official to deal with that, but you have to tell them, because you have an attorney and you are suing us, I would refer that if you want to meet with me personally, that's fine, but I would like to bring the city attorney to the meeting and you bring your lawyer to the meeting and we'll talk about it that way. That would be probably the best way to handle it. I bring that up only because it's happened 3 or 4 times at least in the last couple of years where I've seen that happen. Couple of issues about the way we conduct our meetings. The agenda is not a death warrant. Okay? In other words, if Mark looks down and he notices that there's a bunch of people waiting in the audience in the committee of the whole, we don't need to follow the order of the agenda. We don't even have to do that in the business meeting if it doesn't make sense. As long as we gave KROS and the Herald and everybody else notice of what we're going to talk about, we're fine. The mayor can say, I'm going to move this to a different portion of the meeting. Or the mayor pro tem or whoever's in charge of the meeting can do that. Sometimes I think people think we can't deviate. And yes, you can. There's no legal reason why you can't do that. As long as you don't pull a new agenda item and throw it on the agenda and start talking about it, you're good. Remember that remarks should be germane to the item under consideration. We sometimes, just because naturally the human mind drifts, we've given public notice of this issue and this issue and this issue, and we're talking about it. And I've seen this before where it's natural to start talking about a tangent because it somewhat relates. But my radar goes off right away when I see you guys do that. And usually I will speak up and say something. Usually the mayor does. A point of order would be, Your Honor, point of order, or actually trying to think of what the correct name of the motion is, but and it'll be in this manual when I write it up, but Roberts has a name for it, where you can call to have the meeting brought back to the issue that is being discussed. I'll give you the name of the motion when I send these materials out to you. I just can't think of it off the top of my head. Yeah, Ed O'Neill used to use point of order all the time. It was one rule that he knew very well, and he used it a lot. Order and decorum is, of course, another problem that I see a lot. I mean, I've seen council members screaming at each other, and we rarely do that here. We're pretty civil here. But the one thing, the one rule that I always see at the league when we sit and I go to a lot of these seminars on conduct of meetings and tips and things like that, and the one thing that is the big no-no is the ad hominem discussion, where you have drifted away from the substance of the argument and you are now talking individually about your colleague or someone in the audience or a person out in the community. Generally speaking, it's not illegal. So as your attorney, I can't tell you not to do it, but it's one of the things we suggest to put in the council rules that we won't do that. No matter how irritated you are with, one of your colleagues or the mayor or somebody in the audience or somebody out in town, you just, hey, there's an argument to be made, make it. That's how we conduct it. So it's apparently a big problem in city government in some places. And I went to one meeting where the mayor threatened to remove everybody from the room, which, he has the authority to do that, and he can order the police to do that if the whole room's out of control. And it was because 2 council members were screaming at each other, and there were 2 factions in the audience who were on both sides of that issue, and they got so out of hand that the mayor stood up and gavelled and said, "I'll have everybody cleared from the room," and then that finally got everybody calmed down. But the police chief was in a crouch, ready to pounce. Seriously, he thought he was going to have to spring into action. He was the chief there, and he thought he was going to have to arrest some people. So hopefully we don't ever have that here. But I'm gonna detail in the manual all of the city clerk's tremendous responsibilities that she has, just so you will have them. But it's interesting that this is all in the Iowa Code. This is serious business. Everything that you say does not have to be summarized verbatim, but there has to be a reasonable facsimile of what was discussed, and it's a heavy responsibility. She also has the responsibility of posting these notices 24 hours in advance. That is the real reason why you can't just stray into topics, because the purpose behind that law is to ensure people have adequate time to be prepared to come in and listen to that if you're going to talk about it. So that's why. Talked about personnel matters already. There will be a discussion in the manual about the distinctions, of course, between what we try to achieve at the committee of the whole and what we try to achieve at the business meeting. Technically, and we had this discussion before, it's not technically illegal to take action at a committee of the whole if you actually do give notice that you're going to. But as I was discussing with Mr. Vickers the other day after I talked with the mayor, we don't do it that way typically, and the proper way in Clinton for us to take action is probably to call a special meeting, set it outside the cow, and state that to the media that that's what we're going to do. We could have done that the other day legally under the Iowa Code, but in Clinton we typically don't do that. So,
And Pat, as we talked before, you know, trying to talk about topics that go on those meetings as well. You know, as we talked earlier today about how a topic gets here for either a cow special meeting or whatever.
Right. And yeah, and that is the purpose of the committee of the whole, is to take weighty items of public interest and give the council a time to have a thorough vetting of the issue so that we can discuss it, we can figure it out, so that when it does come forward to the business meeting, it's in order. It's been thoroughly discussed, and we know why we're bringing it forward, and we know what all the objections were, and so on.
And like in the email piece we talked about. So when we talked today, we talked about, like, say, Councilmember Seeley wants to put, a new ordinance together or something. So when you do that, or you want to put it on the cow, you could just email me, but you got to email everybody, right? What's
Right.
Robert's rule?
It's not Roberts. It's the Clinton City Code. If you want something on an agenda for the committee of the whole, for example, any member of the council can put forward a matter, and Matt doesn't have discretion to say, no, I'm not going to do that. You as an individual council member can say, I'd like to move this matter forward for discussion. You just need to communicate in writing to the city administrator that you would like that, and CC everyone else on the council. That is the procedure for doing that. That's right. And of course, do not reply all when you get that email,
And so
because we're
it's-
not going to enter into a discussion outside the public
It'd just
meeting.
be basically topics, so you wouldn't even get into the who, what, where, what, why. It'd be like, we want to talk about a right-of-way. And say, put it on there, and then if you had questions, then you could individually come back to me, but then we'd put it up on the cow, then we would talk about it all together, because we don't want to sway anybody through that request, if you will, so.
Mainly that only came up one time in the past, where the city administrator in the past did not want it on the cow because there wasn't sufficient time, and she was objecting, our former city administrator. So that rule came up, and it went on anyway because the council member followed the rules, and she put it on because she had to. That's the law in Clinton. So
Was that guy in the back?
What topic was
I remember this vividly.
Cody was oh, touche.
So,
Point of order flag.
a couple of other issues. There's often a lot of confusion between the difference between a closed session and an exempt session. Always try to use the correct terminology because they mean vitally different things. An exempt session is literally exempt from the application of Chapter 21. The open meetings law does not apply to an exempt city council session. And it's really only important in the context of collective bargaining because Chapter 20.17 sub 3, the collective bargaining law, says that strategy sessions of the council with its bargaining representative are exempt from the open meetings law. Okay, that's not the same as the closed session. The closed session is when you are actually in Chapter 21, a Chapter 21 covered meeting, and you want to close a portion of that, and you must have one of those discrete exceptions carefully articulated. And we do that in Clinton, we do that on the record by either verbalized articulation of the specific exception by the city attorney, or I will provide a written opinion to that effect if for some reason I couldn't be here, and that could be then read out or whatever the deal is. The reason for that is because you have individual liability, potentially, up to $1,000 for, in an egregious case where you literally and willfully ignored the law and went into closed session when you knew or you should have known that was illegal. So you want to have that opinion there because then you can say, look, I was relying on the advice of counsel, and that is a good defense. That's why we do it that way. Okay, so always ask for that. Okay, if for some reason I'm not around and this issue comes up, be pointed and say, which exception are we going in under, and I want to know why, and I want you to articulate that on the record. Be proactive about that if we ever forget. If we don't, Dave Vickers is going to ask. I guarantee you. He's going to want to know, and he's going to want to get it on the record. So, I jest, but
What are you doing in that closed session?
our reporters know the open records and open meetings laws well here in Clinton. So, and I have had long discussions with Dave about nuances, which he knows well. In fact, he carries, I believe, the same handbook I do, which is a little handbook on it. Public hearings, just a couple of quick notes on the public hearings. Public hearings that we hold, we can have informal public hearings, and we do those all the time, and they don't really have a statutory time frame for those. But any public hearing that is statutory has a specific timeline. And generally speaking, you don't have to worry about that on the council because Matt knows what it is, the city clerk knows what it is, and I know what it is. But I have a list of every type of matter I can provide to you if you want it, because the mayor has it, Matt has it, and Lisa has it, that shows each one of the different types of matters you may be considering that require a public hearing before we move forward on them. So I can provide a handout to you that you can use as a cheat sheet because you know what? If we're all thinking, things work out better. If you notice something on that cheat sheet, bring it to my attention or bring it to Matt's attention and we'll get it corrected and make sure we're doing it right. Open meetings issues of particular concern. Do not poll each other outside the meeting because there is a case out of Warren County that's a recent case, and I'll give you just real briefly the fact pattern. City administrator, as a county administrator actually, went and had individual meetings with each member of the Board of Supervisors until she had it basically worked out about what they were going to do and exactly what the consensus was and exactly how they were going to do what they were going to do. She did all of this, arguably, okay? It was remanded for determination of fact, so I don't know how this case actually ended up turning out. But it appeared very suspiciously that, you know, when they did go to the meeting, there was very little discussion. I can understand the instinct in city government to be efficient and try to figure out what you're going to do before you get in the meeting. But the substantive discussion, especially the voting, it has to happen at the public meeting, and you should never be polling each other for how you're going to vote on this. Do we have 3 or 4, or how many votes do we have? Now, the city administrator can certainly go to each of you and give you information ahead of the meeting. And from that, you're going to probably gather to some degree how somebody feels about something, because nobody's going to not make a comment about it. Okay? But the discussion, save your substantive debate for the meeting itself. Because if you don't, it begins to look like you're having a meeting, especially if 4 of you are together, you're going to have a problem. And the danger is the rolling caucus, which is what happened in this Warren County case. It was basically a rolling caucus, because the suspicion was the administrator, let's say Matt's having a meeting with Councilmember Gassman, and he basically gets Gassman's vote. And he goes to another meeting with Julie, and he says, you know, I think Paul's going to vote this way. How are you going to vote? Even though these are all separate meetings and you never have a quorum in the same room, Supreme Court took a dim view of that. Because once you get to 4 of those discussions, Matt's now conferred with 4, a majority, or quorum of the city council. And it's a problematic case. Everybody hates it because nobody, you know, it's like, how do we even conduct city business with this case out there? I'm just saying, it's fine to give information. It's fine to convey information. It's fine to get informed. It's fine to ask questions. Try not to debate, discuss, develop consensus outside the meeting, because it's illegal, arguably, under the Supreme Court decision. Now, that was remanded for further fact-finding, so theoretically, if that went back to the district court and she said, no, I never got anybody's vote, I gave them this information and they said what they said, then that probably wasn't illegal. But the Supreme Court said, you got to go back, court, judge, and discern those facts to see if they broke the law. So, if you receive an email, letter, correspondence, memo, anything from the city attorney or from Matt, do not reply all. Electronic, the word electronic appears in the code. Meetings by electronic means, okay? That's what that would end up being if you all started replying all. I know you all know this, but I just reiterate it. Public meetings and gatherings held in the community, you can meet for social and ministerial reasons. You can go to the chamber. You can show up for ribbon cuttings. You can go to parties. You can do all that stuff together as a full council if you want. Just don't discuss public business. Lisa and I have had numerous discussions about this. If we think that the chamber, for example, will regularly invite you all, because it's important stuff that gets discussed and information is given, and of course you want to go to those meetings, we just notice them up now, just in case. Chances are, if we didn't, you would not break the law, because you aren't going to come talk to each other. You're going to listen to what's said, and you might chat a little bit, 1 or 2 of you, but you're not going to break the law. But just in case, we've been putting up notices that say, you know, it's possible that a quorum of the city council will meet at the Chamber of Commerce to discuss public business. And it might include any of the matters that are on the agenda for that meeting. Just out of an abundance of caution. It's just something to be aware of, that you can create a public meeting. You could create a public meeting at your house, you know, if all the criteria are present. Packets. One of the things we do pretty well here is people do read the packet. You can tell, because the level of discourse is really, really good at these meetings. If you have questions ahead of the meeting, bring them to the city administrator ahead of the meeting as much as you possibly can. Like today, Councilmember Seeley had some questions about some stuff, and rather than just bring it up tonight, he got it all straightened out today. That's how you handle it. You know, if you don't know what you're voting on, or you're not sure about something, because the public meeting time should be tied to the high-level discourse of policy debate. It should not be, I didn't understand the facts, or I never understood this, or your memo wasn't clear. most of the department heads will tell you, oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't clear. You know, they'll give you the documents they took it from, and they'll show them to you. So, couple things about a quorum with us. People forget that a 3-2 vote is not going to pass an ordinance on this council. How many of you knew that instantaneously? Because even I forgot about that. You know, and I was at a seminar the other day, and I remembered that was, I should know that instantly, but I had kind of forgotten that. But that's actually the case. If you have an ordinance or a resolution, you need a majority of the entire city council voting yes. So keep that in mind. If you have a pet project you'd like to get passed, you know, you're going to need 4 votes of the entire council. So if you only have 5 present and you know 2 are voting no, that thing's not going to go anywhere. Whether it's a resolution or an ordinance. Now, motions, those can carry on a 3-2, just a majority of whoever's voting. Motions are fine. We can, God forbid this ever happens, but when if a tornado flies through the city of Clinton and we have the city hall has fallen down, you can meet on an emergency basis. I would recommend that you confer with the city attorney before you do it, just to make sure it truly complies and is an emergency. You can meet inside of the 24-hour rule for an emergency where, you know, irreparable harm is going to occur if the city council doesn't direct something to happen. You know, spend this money right away to fix this thing before it falls on someone's head, for instance. Okay? Every council member present when a question is stated from the providing officer shall vote. Okay? Now, unless you're going to abstain because of a conflict of interest, in which case your vote doesn't count. Okay, but that's an unusual and obscure reality that I think a lot of folks never really think about. But if you're here, you have to vote. I actually saw a council member once say, I don't want to vote. The mayor said, are you abstaining? Do you have a conflict? And he said, no. And he said, well, you need to vote. And he did, eventually. But I actually saw that at a council meeting once.
What's the difference between the abstaining and the recusing?
Recusal, right.
Yeah.
If you have a reason to recuse yourself, your vote will not count, which, of course, that would create a problem, wouldn't it, on an ordinance or a resolution? Because if you were part of the 4 and you recused, your vote is as if it's not there. It's like you're not present.
But you can only recuse yourself if you have a conflict or something too as well, right?
More or less, yeah. You need a recognizable reason. You can't just say, I would prefer not to go on record on this matter. That's what you can't do.
When would you abstain versus recuse?
It's really the same thing for purposes. Yeah.
I thought we had 2, but I can't remember.
It's really more or less one and the same. It's basically you have a legal reason why you think you should not vote. Now, we have a... Go ahead.
But I was at the Iowa League of Cities, and I went to that seminar, and they said anybody that recuses themselves is supposed to tell you their reason.
Well, that's right. They should state the reason.
Here. We abstain and recuse ourselves without saying why, and you're supposed to say the reason why.
That's probably correct.
It is correct.
Sean's got a lot of explaining.
Yeah.
And part of the thing is we all know we have business folks on the council, and they will have a business interest in something they're voting on, and I think we kind of assume that that's why they're recusing. But Councilmember Gassman's right. We probably should say. Right. I think you don't need to give great detail about why, but something to do with the fact that, you know, I work for this business, and I think out of an abundance of caution, we might have an interest in this matter, so I recuse.
Well, tonight was just a sewer refund, for the record. So
Sure.
we sold our house and we were getting a sewer refund. That's why I abstained. Just to be clear.
And that would certainly qualify. That answer right there would be beautiful. We can go into a lot of things about motions and how they work, but just really briefly on motions, there are some basic motions that we always have to deal with all the time. I just want to talk a little bit about a few ones that we rarely use that we can use if we wish, and some distinctions among the motions that people don't always appreciate. First of all, if you move to amend anything, Mark is very good at this. He knows how to handle these. And Paul always has it straight in his head too. But sometimes we have amendments within amendments and so on. You always have to vote completely on the amendment before going back to the primary motion under consideration. Until that's done, you cannot go back. You know, that makes sense for a lot of reasons. Motions, oftentimes you'll have a council member who doesn't believe discussion is appropriate right now on something because we need more information or there's a reason why we shouldn't consider it tonight. Think about what you're trying to achieve when you make this motion, because depending on what you want, the motion will be different. If you want the thing to just sit there indefinitely until the time is right and we have no idea when it might be right, that's when you say, I move to lay this on the table, or I move to table this matter. What that means is it'll sit there until somebody moves to take it off the table at a later meeting. But if you know exactly for sure that I'll be ready next week. I'm ready at the meeting 2 weeks from now to go forward. Then the proper motion is I move to postpone to a date certain, and I'd like it to move to the meeting on whatever date. Okay, so remember that don't say I want to table this unless that's what you mean. I just want it to sit there and to some nebulous date where if nobody ever takes it off the table, it's done. It's dead.
So would it show up on every
No.
meeting agenda?
No, only when, like for example, let's say Councilmember Seeley says, I don't like this proposal, I don't think we're ready to discuss it, I want to table it, and he moves to table it. Until he goes to Matt and says, I want to pull this thing off the table, or someone does. Someone else on the council could also say, I'd like to, Seeley tabled this 2 meetings ago, and I'd like to bring it back. And then we would go through the process of voting to bring it off the table at that time. Usually we mean postpone to a date certain because we have a council meeting in mind where we want to bring it back.
At that point, though, if it's brought off the table, it appears on the agenda, but it's got to go through the vote process before it can even talk about it that meeting?
Right. I move we bring from the table the matter previously tabled by Councilmember Seeley.
And let's say that fails.
Then it stays on the table.
It's done.
If
Or
it
stays
fails
on-
for lack of a second or it doesn't get a majority to come off the table, then it stays on the
But
table.
then if it passes that evening, can then it go ahead and be discussed?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
It doesn't have to wait to
as long as it was
discuss.
on the agenda with 24 hours notice, you can bring it off the table and talk about it all day long. The other thing is you can move to end debate, okay? We don't have anybody like this right now, but if we get somebody who's completely out of control elected to the council and you don't want to listen to any more irrelevant blather, you can move to end debate by saying, I move the question. And if 2/3 of the council votes yes,
I'm new, how do you know?
Yeah. It's always down at that end of the table.
I mean, example, I was at a council meeting 2 weeks ago where there was a brand new council member elected, and he brought up it was a contract the city had already signed, and it was done, and they were already proceeding, and they couldn't breach their contract. But this council member went on and on and on about how we shouldn't have entered into this. We need to set it aside. I want to make a motion right now to get, and finally this one council member says, I'm